Okay, we are live. I probably should have gone live a bit earlier because to let people stream in.
That's all right.
Yeah, we can vamp for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Let the folks know that I'm a human person.
Yes. No robot. Yeah.
Yeah. Dad's here.
It works.
Yeah.
We are live.
All right.
Awesome.
This is awkward. Didn't think this one out that well, but we're going with it.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, start rolling with it.
Yeah. So we'll do a little reintroduction once more people stream in. But hello, one person who is watching, who is my dad. Welcome to the very first ever live episode of the Bowery Mick History Show. It's the new show that I am doing with my whole brand, Bowery Mick History. It's going to be one live show every month, one recorded show every month, and that'll supplement the regular blog posts that I do over at bowerymickhistory.wordpress.com. If you're watching on Facebook, you're probably already on the Bowery Mick History page. If you're watching on Twitch, head on over to facebook.com/Bowery Mick. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter, just at Bowery_Mick. And if you're by some chance watching on YouTube and you just accidentally stumbled into that, hello.
You are the first.
Yes. So for this very first episode of the Bowery Mick History Show, I figured it's a new year. It's 2021. We made it out of the worst year ever.
Yeah.
And I thought we'd do a little look back on the worst year ever, 2020. Because 2020 brought with it a lot of changes, a lot of historical events, and a lot of impact on pretty much every part of human life and human society, including, but not limited to, the field of public history. Mm-hmm. So I invited my good friend John Heckman, the tattooed historian, to sit down and let's talk about just the shit year of 2020 and what it did to public history, and maybe where public history is going in 2021 and beyond. So, see, Jaunty Crow is here.
Jaunty.
Hey.
Good evening. Good evening.
All right. So,
thank you, Andrew, for having me on too, brother.
Yeah. For those who don't know, I do a weekly live stream with John on Friday nights. We stream Verdun over on Twitch. Mm-hmm. We just talk about the Great War. We also talk about whatever else comes up. I think we've had some very interesting conversations on those Friday night Verdun streams.
Yeah, and we've done it sober.
Yes,
we have those conversations sober, which says something.
Well, there were a few times when I had a couple beers, but yeah.
Well, okay. Well,
definitely the last time I was completely sober.
And it was lively. So
yes.
There you go.
So John, how about you introduce yourself and your brand, the Tattooed Historian?
Sure. Thanks again for having me on, Andrew. I really appreciate it. My name is John Heckman. I have a master's degree in history, and I started my brand, the Tattooed Historian, back in 2015 from the cubicle of my old job, and decided that I wanted to kind of brand myself as a historian and showcase how I do history. There's going to be a lot of air quotes tonight, so get ready. How I work as a historian. And at the time I was working in the archival world. So I was taking photos of photos I was finding in the archives or documents and posting them online for people who may not know that they were in the archive. It slowly started to balloon and get bigger and bigger because more people were paying attention to it. And in 2018, I left my old job to pursue this basically as a full-time gig. And we've been rolling along ever since pretty well, right up to COVID in 2020, which we'll talk about here in a bit, because it is a small business and small businesses have taken quite the hit. But before COVID, it was not only live streaming very often, but it was also in-person gigs, as I called them, like it was a band or something. And that obviously has taken a hit, which we'll talk about later. But it's been a very rewarding experience for me. I've gotten to travel a lot of places, meet a lot of great people, and do a lot of mentoring as well. And now we're on Twitch and 9 other platforms I'm on, and which is crazy. And but it's great that we could link up with the idea of our Friday night World War I streams, because as we'll go over here in the next hour or so, I really feel like we're on the cusp of some great things to come. Not only what we're doing together and others are doing with us, but I think we're going to have a really cool change in 2021 in the history field, which I'm sure we'll go over here in a little bit.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up your live gigs, because that was actually one of the first things I remember hearing about the Tattooed Historian was when you started doing the Gary Owen things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You do this, like, you just host a presentation on the second floor of the Gary Owen. I didn't even know there was a second floor to the Gary Owen back when you started that.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, these were like big things. Like I think I've only been to one so far, and I hope to go to more when COVID is finally over. But I went to I think it was Jake Wynn's Civil War medicine presentation.
Yes,
and that was packed.
That was. We even have an ambulance show up, so that was good.
Oh, I know the person who that ambulance is called for.
I know.
Yeah, those guys were college kids causing all sorts of trouble.
I tell you.
But yeah, obviously COVID and lockdown, all that put an end to stuff like that. So we as public historians had to retreat to the internet. And I think we've done a pretty decent job at adapting to that. COVID is when Bowery Mick history started, because I was bored at home with nothing else to do. So I just started writing about basically the stuff that I didn't ever have a opportunity to write papers in class for. So I started writing about Operation Varsity. Then I started writing about, video games and their portrayal of history. Now here I am on 3 different platforms interviewing people. Right. And I remember you, that summer, like this past summer, you went crazy with the live streams, and as did everyone else.
Right.
You had your basically virtual conference.
Right. Yeah. The whole game changed with COVID as far as the public history field is concerned, in my opinion, where it was adapt or die in that way, where you had to adapt to the current situation, or you're going to be lost in the mix. And luckily, I had been live streaming for a long time. I mean, I had been doing live stream tours on battlefields and historical sites for a couple of years, so I was already kind of prepared for that moment. And then when COVID hit, I immediately received people who came to me and said, we would love to do some live stream, but we don't know how to do it. Would you like to host it from a technological standpoint, be on there with us, but also allow us to do our thing, because I already had the hardware and software. So it really became a nice extra incentive to do more work. And I remember I was on some days I was on 5 days a week and going pretty strong. And it was probably about April, I started thinking about all the conferences that were going to be canceled because it was the early days of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I said, well, we're not going to have conferences in April or the foreseeable future. And we had heard, across several weeks of news broadcasts that we're going to be like this for a year, maybe 2 years. And I kept thinking about everyone who wrote a paper or did a poster presentation maybe or something for a conference that were now graduating in May, and they weren't going to get that leg up on the competition, basically to say, hey, this is what I did in my senior year in undergrad, or this is what I did my second year of my MA. And I decided that there was an opportunity there to latch on to some of them and say, put the word out, which I did on Twitter. And I said, would anyone like to come on to a full day of a digital conference? And that's what I called it, the Tattoo Historians Digital Conference. And I did it on a Saturday in June. And we had 6 presentations by various people from 2 separate countries. And immediately after, everyone's like, are you going to do another one? And then I heard, are you going to do a multiple day one? And it just started to really ramp up, but I never got around to it. But before other conferences were starting to go online, the brand was already doing it on a day basis. It's like, this is our day to do it. And they put it on their resume. Everyone who went on there, it's like they did the Tattoo Historian Digital Conference. And I never thought that I would be footnoted or on someone's resume in my life, but here we are.
Yeah.
So, it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, for a lot of public historians in general, but especially public historians, with everything locked down, the only way you're going to get your word out is through a live stream or through something on the internet. It has to involve the internet. And I want to draw attention to a comment from my dad. You guys adapted to virtual options way better than my current employer. Current employer being the National Park Service. Well, let's not talk about that.
Oh, yeah, let's not go there.
But I mean, not everyone was very quick to adapt to COVID and doing stuff on the internet. Some museums especially had I think weren't across the board great with adapting in some places. I know the Civil War Medical Museum is an exception to that because I get notifications on my Facebook every day from something that they're doing.
Yeah.
But there were people who did struggle with trying to adapt to this, to quarantine and lockdown, and trying to do history in the virtual space. And I remember, because I'm an avid viewer of your Buzzed History morning live streams, and you've talked on multiple occasions there about how all these museums didn't want to invest the time or effort into all this stuff that is now vital in the COVID era.
Yeah,
I'm dubbing this the COVID era.
You might as well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember going to, I would be called in to a museum or a nonprofit, and they would ask me, how do I do it? How do I reach a new demographic? Because my demographic was so much younger than a lot of them. And I would go in, I would tell them what apps I was on or what platforms I was on. And before COVID, pre-COVID, it was, well, our people aren't there, so we're not going to do that. That's kind of weird. And I was like, well, okay, when, not knowing that when something would happen, or not knowing that COVID would happen. And so it was kind of funny in April, May, when I start to see these entities coming online now and fiddling around with the technology and figuring it out, which I love to see them do it. It's okay, that's great. But it was kind of one of those moments where, I didn't see this coming. I didn't know it was going to happen. I just was very intrigued with the notion of putting history on different platforms. And now we're forced to do it in many ways. And you're really starting to see that some of them, there are extremes to it, Andrew, where some people fiddled around with it and decided that it wasn't for them, or they didn't want to spend the time on it. And then some people just came out of the gate running full speed ahead, got to the second turn, they ran out of breath. And now they're, whatever's happening. So a lot of us didn't know a lot of people didn't know how to have patience with it or to pace themselves with it. And it just takes those two things, really.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point, because I remember, April, May, there was I was getting notifications for 8 different live streams happening on the same day.
Right.
Like everyone who had a phone or a computer and a Facebook page was doing
Mhm.
something.
Right.
And like, yeah, it got to the point where I was like, I don't want to hear about it. Just
Mhm.
because I
Mhm.
was getting a little fatigued by all like every live stream happening every day.
Mhm.
Um, so, and I'm sure there were other people who had similar feelings.
Yeah.
Um,
I was even doing that. I was doing them.
yeah,
And I was like, wow, another one. Here we go. And then I was actually contacting other organizations saying, when is your live stream schedule? Because I don't want to overlap.
yeah,
And I was trying to coordinate with other organizations because I'm like, I don't want to be taking your audience and vice versa. So it got to that point where I was not only setting up the interviews, but then I was making sure that I wasn't stepping on anybody else's toes. But
yeah,
then you get the people who didn't care, and you get 5 notifications, and you have to choose like it's a TV. What channel
yeah,
do you want to be on?
yeah. My dad called it Zoom
Yeah,
fatigue.
that's
It definitely
yeah,
was.
literally Zoom fatigue. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so something else that happened in 2020
Mhm.
was, we started moving to new platforms, exploring new platforms,
Mhm.
most notably Twitch, which
Mhm.
this we're currently streaming on, among others. And you and I actually did an interview back in, what was it, October
It's something
or
like that. Yeah.
November? Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was
uh,
October.
yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about, among many things, Twitch as a platform for historians.
Right.
I think you've definitely been a big voice in advocating for people to use Twitch.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so what about Twitch attracted you there?
I actually did the thing that I tell everybody to do when they make a brand. I went over to the platform and I took the name, the Tattooed Historian, and whether I was going to use it or not, I had it.
Hmm.
And I think I picked that up 2 or 3 years ago, and I just let it sit, and I didn't really do a lot with it. And right when the pandemic started, I started to see a lot more organic reach on Twitch, meaning people were just naturally going to Twitch and looking at things and doing stuff. And I thought, well, I'm going to go over and see what's going on Twitch now because this is interesting. This is about April or May, around there, right at the beginning of the pandemic. And I started to see that uh, the NBA,
Yeah,
Formula One racing, ESPN, and all these organizations, which are major corporations and major sporting corporations and organizations, had channels and they were running them. And I'm like, okay, there's my green flag, because now it's like, all right, everyone's here. And I just did a post today on my WordPress blog where I believe it's 73% of viewership in the second quarter of 2019. So 2 years ago almost.
yeah,
73% were between the ages of 16 and 34. So my demographic was there that I wanted to hit because I wanted to get 20 years out of the 16-year-olds, and I wanted to get the people in grad school and all that.
yeah,
So I decided that it was time for me to go over to Twitch because I also saw that it wasn't only gaming anymore. I saw that it was podcasts and live talk shows like this,
yeah,
live streaming with just talking and interviewing people. And so there are makeup tutorials and all this, and artists on there and DJs doing their
yeah,
thing because clubs are closed. And I realized I needed to get on there because it's an entertainment platform now. It's not a gaming platform like it was. Gaming is definitely a huge contributor,
yeah,
but it's an entertainment platform now. And I mean, watching someone game is entertainment, but you get my drift that it's
yeah,
not just watching someone game anymore. And I thought this is a unique opportunity for public historians or even academics, students of history, to get on there and have a page that they can live stream on and chat with followers about some historical event, or they can have interviews, or they can do like we do and do historical gaming and just wrap it under this large umbrella that hasn't been done before. And it's only I think it's mainly due to the life experience that we're going through right now, because so many people have been pushed in new directions for entertainment, and so many people are cutting the cord with cable. They're
Yeah.
watching YouTube. They're watching Twitch. I watch more Twitch than I watch television. So I think there's a huge place there for the history field. I just had a meeting this morning with people from the history department at a university. I won't name which one, but I basically talked them into making a Twitch channel for the history department at the university. And I said, this is a perfect opportunity because the demographic is there. You can get your undergrads coming in, and you can pick up some grad students and have fun with it. So there's definitely a lot of room to build on Twitch, and it's very user accessible. It's free to download. It's free to follow someone. And then they can get in the chat and hang out. So I think it's just an awesome resource to have.
Yeah. Although my dad may argue with you on the Twitch front.
Well, I'll tell you this. Joe will appreciate this. I had one of my followers, a gentleman named John. I won't say his last name.
Yeah.
He came on there when I had my first chat, and I said on the Tattooed Historian, I'm going to have a chat. If anybody wants to join me, please come over, follow so you can get in the chat. And I did it. And then I posted afterwards, thank you so much for being a part of the conversation, etc. And he put in the comments, Twitch isn't the place for me. I'm not into this kind of gaming thing format and all that. Now he's on every day when I'm on. He's grown accustomed to the fact that we can just chat while I'm gaming too about whatever's going on. And it's that interaction also of when I see them pop up, when I see anybody pop up in the chat, I'm interacting with them immediately, and I get to know them through the chat. I don't know John personally, but I know now where he's from. I ask him how the weather is where he's from. What is he studying now? He's really into the Seminole Wars. Okay. And this is how you make the networking connections. And Twitch is a great way to do that. And I just think that now I can rebrand it in a new way.
Our good friend Hugh Guffnett definitely agrees
with you.
Yeah. Definitely a good resource. Reaches out to new demographics too.
Hugh's been an MVP on there for us on several.
Yeah, I think that was I think the best. Some of the best done live streams we've done were with Hugh. Mm-hmm. I think those are also the longest because we just didn't want to stop talking.
Those are almost our 3-hour marathon.
Yeah. So my dad actually has a question.
Yeah.
Is there an advantage to Twitch over something like YouTube?
To me, there are a few advantages. One is that everything on Twitch, or mostly everything on Twitch, 95% of what you see on Twitch is live. Therefore, you have great interaction opportunities. On YouTube, we have this like you're doing, Andrew, where it is live on YouTube, and there may be people pop up in the chat as we go along from YouTube. But we don't usually go to YouTube looking for live events.
Yeah,
we're not. It's not there yet. We're not to that point. We're going to looking for videos and other films, maybe even rent a movie. On Twitch, we're looking for that human interaction because we know that person is live at that moment. Also, if you go to a 16 to a 40-year-old and say, what's a sexier platform right now, YouTube or Twitch? It's going to be Twitch. Because that's just where they want to be. It's better. It's edgier. It's to me, it's cleaner than YouTube is. It flows nicely. You can have great interactions. You can put strange emojis in the chat and have fun. You can do all kinds of crazy things and see some awesome stuff. I think it's more visually appealing to a lot of the people who are a part of it.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. My dad, just to prove a point, has now joined the Twitch chat instead.
I will get him sold on that by the time 2021 is up. That's my New Year's resolution. I don't make resolutions, but I'll get Joe on there.
But you definitely have a point in that, Twitch is definitely better for, that interaction. I think, especially in the public history field, you need that interaction because public history is all about conversation. It's not just me telling you the history. It's me telling telling you the history, and then we're having a discussion about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And any interpreter will tell you that's how it's supposed to go.
Yeah. I mean, there is no excuse, in my opinion, and I'll say it. You don't have to agree with me. Just don't get in trouble. There's no excuse, in my opinion, why the National Park Service doesn't have a Twitch channel. No excuse. Because you need to get information out to the masses. Oh my God. A Twitch channel for the National Park Service, even one park. And I have several in mind. And I would be like, they could use a Twitch channel because you could do all kinds of ranger talks. You can interview people who work for the park that are behind the scenes. It would be crazy. And now you can live stream through your telephone or your cell phone. I remember before cell phones, Andrew. You can do that now. So there's no excuse, really.
I'm pretty sure if you ask Jason Rickersty why there's no NPS Twitch channel, he could probably give you a reason. I don't think he would like the reason, but he would definitely give you the reason.
Yeah. I just think that for us, I don't have a museum, and neither do you.
Yeah.
We don't run an archive, and we don't have a battlefield in our backyard. And we can run a Twitch. So, and this is what I used to be the selling point with museums. I'm like, you have artifacts of the week for 15 years. There's no reason why you can't post an artifact a week, or artifact of the week. That's the similar thing with many of the Park Service sites, but it's also governmental, and I understand that too, and the red tape.
Yeah.
So we're on that line of like, we're pushing a new envelope for some in the history field. There are other historians on Twitch. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. Many of them, though, do other things. They may be streaming Fortnite or Minecraft or something else. But I think once we get the ball rolling, us and others who are starting to see that there's a development here, I think you're going to see a larger influx of arts and humanities on Twitch. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, Twitch, I forget how long Twitch has been around. It hasn't been around for super long as a platform, but it definitely has been growing. And I think a lot of that growth is a almost direct result of COVID. And I think that growth is going to continue going into 2021 and beyond. And I'm excited to see where that goes. I'm definitely going to be a part of that. So are you.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can get some more historians a part of that.
And this will be the way to do it, is that we bring historians on a new platform they haven't been on yet. That's how I got older, traditional, quote unquote, historians, there's the air quotes again, on a live stream. They were scared of being on a live stream.
Yeah.
And they didn't realize that I'm more conversational. But Twitch is owned by Amazon. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, no.
It's not going anywhere. So we might as well get used to it.
Yeah. So another thing that happened in 2020, and this most certainly did impact history, was we saw the explosion of the Black Lives Matter movement following the murder of George Floyd. And that put historians in a very interesting position. And basically a lot of people, I shouldn't say everyone, but there were a lot of people trying to understand what was going on. And historians were probably the best equipped to answer those questions. And I would say that, we saw an increase in historians participating in activism. Yes. I know,
including me.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, the first Bowery Mick blog post that came out right after that had very little to do with actual history and was just mainly about, kind of showing the history that led up to this and how we should proceed going forward. But I know a brilliant historian, Marvin Alonzo Greer, Mag the Historian, who, if you don't follow them already, you should absolutely follow them. He was going to these protests and was also doing essentially public interpretation at these protests, because he was going wearing basically an enslaved impression,
Right.
because he's a living historian. He was doing that, and he was sharing that story while also participating in this push and this movement for racial equality. And Hugh, who's in the comments on Facebook, I know he did a couple live streams just a couple weeks ago with some of his friends from the Sons and Daughters of Ham and the Hannibal Guards, which are two great Black living history organizations. And they were talking, and those were great. Those were talking about words are escaping me at the moment. But like just putting in that element of like how what's going on around us today is rooted in this history.
Right.
And John T. Crow, Not Your Mama's History, also a great. Cheney McKnight, another great person to follow.
I'm honored to call both of them friends. I haven't seen Cheney though in quite a long time.
Yeah,
but they are amazing people.
But yeah, and I definitely took on a more aggressively anti-Confederate, anti-fascist tone in the summer with definitely my blog posts. And I say aggressive because I was literally just saying, fuck those guys. And I caught a lot of hate for that. But the people who hate that, I'm okay with. I'm okay with them hating me. But I definitely think public history was definitely largely impacted by that, because there's now this push, and this push has been a long time coming, to widen the scope of the story. For years, the history field has been largely focused on white men.
Yep.
And I don't think any reasonable historian would disagree with that.
Right.
And now you're starting to see this expansion of the story to look at different genders, different races, and bring them into the story and show how not so simple history really is.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, this was my first instance of being involved in a protest.
Yeah.
This was the thing that got my ass out of the chair and got me out. And I was very honored and delighted to be one of the co-hosts, if you will, of the rally we did at the Gettysburg Battlefield, talking about what had happened there on July 4th and the travesty that happened there on July 4th. And we had a petition or letter afterward, because we were asked to leave the National Cemetery.
Yeah,
which is a whole other thing, because we weren't protesting in the cemetery, but we were asked to leave the cemetery, but the people on July 4th weren't.
Yeah.
And they had guns and all kinds of great stuff. And that led to a whole letter writing campaign, and saying that, we had, I think, 330 some historians and just history lovers sign off on it. And I know there weren't many on there. I know probably 50% of them have never been involved in a form of protest before. That just wasn't a huge thing for a lot of us for many years, until the killing of George Floyd and the rise of the new rise of the Black Lives Matter movement. It had been around, but this was a new iteration of it, as far as like there was a new rekindling of this. And I couldn't stay out of it. I couldn't stay like away. I was like, I have to have my voice be heard. And even though I run a non-political page, this is not political. This is a civil rights issue. And I felt that I could not, as a human being, with empathy and hope, sit by the sidelines and be like, everyone else fight this for me. That's not how I am. And I was really intrigued with how our little band of people were treated, and that really allowed my white privilege to show. And as far as now, I see it what I had taken for granted for years, because people with badges were treating us unfairly at our rally. And I'm like, okay, if they're doing it to us, what's going on to other people? And as a historian, standing on that battlefield where basically it was up for grabs if Black Lives mattered in 1863 at that time. And we're standing in the spot where all this was taking place, hundreds of yards from the high water mark of the Confederacy. And the Bryan Farm, where the free African-American man had his family before the battle, and they had to run when the Confederates came, because the Confederates were kidnapping people and sending them back into enslavement. And so that really hit home for a lot of us who were there. And I was really moved by that. And it was like a merry band of historians coming together finally and saying that enough had been enough. And, especially after the whole July 4th incident, which anyone who doesn't know about it can go check out. They can Google it and you'll see what we're talking about, because that's a whole other thing. But it did reinvigorate a lot of us, not only to think of history as not being neutral, because history is definitely like there's facts and then there's propaganda.
Yeah.
And I've often said, if you're reading good history, it will make you uncomfortable.
Yeah. And
there'll be times where you have to look at yourself in different ways. And I think this summer and late spring, summer, when the Black Lives Matter movement really took off and really pushed, I saw a lot of great historians out on the street who I never thought I would see out there. And I was very, very elated to see that we were now connecting the lessons we've learned as historians to what was going on now, and saying that this is basically Reconstruction 3.0. And, that's basically what I was calling it.
Yeah, you're definitely right about, good history should make you uncomfortable. It's something I've often said is history is not supposed to be your safety blanket.
That's right. Yeah. That's your first Bowery Mick t-shirt.
Yeah.
And
I know I've seen Marvin wearing I think it was a t-shirt when you guys did that live stream reviewing the Army Museum. Museums aren't neutral.
Correct.
History isn't necessarily neutral. And I also want to head to the comments for a little bit. Jaunty Crow, Jen, history is a form of protest.
Yes,
absolutely. Hugh, this summer was definitely a good time to spread the importance of history. These modern issues are rooted in history. Bringing that content to the forefront will also likely help encourage those who aren't often fond of history. That's definitely right. I think a lot of people learned a lot in the past 6 months.
Yeah, and the other thing that I saw, that there was I don't want to call it a trap set there, but I think far too often I was watching live streams about like enslaved peoples during the Civil War, or something to that effect, where it was like the African American experience of the Civil War. How do we see monuments from the Jim Crow era, on and on and on. Yeah. And I saw those live streams right when we were talking earlier about, you'd see 8 a day where they're going on. And every time I click on it, it's people who look like me.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're falling into another thing here where it's like, I don't want to hear from people who look like me. I've been hearing from people who look like me. And so I kind of rebelled against that too, where I'm just like, I can't take this seriously. I'm sorry, because I want to hear from someone, who's not white, Anglo-Saxon. I want to hear from someone who this really hurts them and has hurt them since they were a child walking past that statue. That's who I want to hear from. So yeah.
Yeah, I think 2020 really saw history explode as a piece of as like a social tool as well as a political tool, because in the past couple weeks we've seen, you know, history keeps getting brought up. The recent events in Washington D.C. A lot of people were pointing at, like, you know, they were pointing to the history books, referencing stuff like that with calls of insurrection and all that.
Right.
So I think very recently, like the past 6-7 months, we've seen a lot more people being prompted to actually look into their history of this country, because that's helping people understand what the hell is actually going on right now.
Right. Right.
I think more people have learned more about what slavery was actually like in the past 6 months, than most people have in their entire lifetimes, which definitely says something about the state of history education in America. But I'm not going to get into that.
That's another live stream.
Yeah.
I just on that note, we're hearing more about it due to recent events, as far as history in the media, history in the news, and all that sort of stuff. Don't take your history from pundits.
Yeah.
Because I'm seeing too many talking heads who are coming on, and now they're a historian. Last week they were a virologist telling us how to, like, you don't need a mask, and now they're going to tell us this is what John Adams said in 1776. I'm not afraid to tell them that. It's just one of the things that you can't get. You can't get your history from some of these pundits we have on 24-hour news networks.
Yeah.
They have to bring on historians, trusted historians, peer-reviewed historians, and to get it, because it's just like, I don't get it sometimes where people are like, oh, history makes me feel so good about everything in life, and it's like, then you're not reading history.
Yeah. If you feel good, you're not reading history, you're reading propaganda.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
So
your chat's going great.
Yeah. Jen, haters scoff at safe spaces and participation trophies, yet they're the last to accept histories and just there to fill you with good feels.
Right.
That's incredibly true. I mean, it's the age-old meme, like, they say you can't have they say you can't have participation trophies, yet what are all these Confederate monuments?
Yeah.
And
at Gettysburg, for example,
the
GAR, the Grand Army of the Republic, the Union veterans didn't want one single Confederate monument on that battlefield, not one. And so it's not just a modern thing to be like that about Confederate monuments. The men who fought there and fought that against that rebellion did not want that to become a shrine to the Confederacy. And, like Scott Hancock says, Dr. Hancock Gettysburg, if someone who didn't know the history drove down Confederate Avenue, you would think that they won the battle, and it's a really interesting insight, as far as that's concerned, because, Lee is up higher than Meade is, and all this other on the monument. And, so it's really an interesting time, because they think, it's modern day liberals who are against them. Go back and read what these Union veterans were saying about Confederate monumentation. They were not going to allow that. And it's crazy to think that people twist it for modern reasons and say, oh, it's the left or it's whatever and going on. Those men in those federal armies didn't want that. And when we talk about, well, they reconciled, it was white reconciliation. And we got to remember that, the veterans in 1938 shaking hands across the wall at the angle, they were all white, and I would love to see you pull out like 16 images of Confederates shaking hands with USCT men. Yeah. It's nuts. It's crazy. But it's going back to feeling good, right? It's going back to this idea that the Civil War was like Gone with the Wind. You know, or something like that, where it's just blissful and all that until William Tecumseh Sherman comes through. Everyone's happy until that happens. And too many people are afraid of being uncomfortable with history. You're afraid of trying new things. You're trying, you know, it's like you don't want to eat your broccoli. You know, just eat the broccoli. Just eat the broccoli. You know.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been a intellectual battle over the historical memory of the United States in recent months. And I think, you know, what we see happening now is the history isn't changing.
No.
The memory is.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Historical memory ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
And we brought that up time and time again when we did the stuff with Pete Carmichael. You know, especially with like Kerry Janney talking about Appomattox and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the Union or the U.S. Army, as I call them now. I grew up with the Union Army. Now I'm like, no, it's the U.S. Army.
Yeah.
The U.S. Army won that war, but the Confederate Army won the memory, and for decades afterward, and they're still knocking on that door. And but historical memory ebbs and flows with cultural norms and political norms and such like that. So that it's no wonder to me. I have no reason to doubt why this is occurring right now. With monuments or statues or whatever it may be, is that the penicillin to fix the problem? Absolutely not. And I think there are some who believe that if we take a statue down, it's done. You know, this is the great moment, and it's like, no, that's not the thing, and we need to go deeper than that. Yeah, so, I see your dad saying he doesn't refer to the Union or the Union Army interpreting. Yeah, that's been a thing that I had to wean myself off of, because I grew up in the old school version of interpretation. So it's been one of those things that we as historians have had to change our dialogue and how we bring the stuff across as well. You know, and I know that that's also something that changed in 2020 was our outlook on demographics and how we bring new historians into the mix, even though they're already out there. You know, like, why can't we get anybody on the panel that's a minority? And I'm like, they're everywhere. Ask them. You know, it's just they were never asked before. So I really think that 2020 opened our eyes to not take anything for granted on so many levels, whether it's our peers or whether it's our life in general, because now, you know, we're losing 4,400 people a day. Yesterday is who we lost. You cannot take life for granted right now, and you can't take your history for granted either. And in both instances, whether it's your life today or history, there's going to be moments where you're uncomfortable. And I think that that's where we need to start connecting the dots and not taking these moments for granted. And, you know, really looking at how 2020 affects 2021 and 2022 in the history field, because I really think that it's going to be a long-lasting impact. I don't think that once we're out of the pandemic and we're back to some sense of normalcy, I don't think, as far as digital history is concerned, that we're going to regress. I think there are far too many good digital history projects out there that aren't just going to be like, well, we're done with that. We're going away.
I mean, that's actually where I was wanting to go, because, you know, we've talked at length about pretty much the big points of 2020. We're now in 2021. You know, where is history going in 2021? Where's the public history field going in 2021? And, I think you're absolutely right. We have now established, or we're still very much establishing this intense, digital presence as historians. That's not really going to go anywhere in 2021, 2022, 2025. That's if anything, that I can foresee that growing. And I'm definitely going to be here, and I know you're going to be here.
I hope so.
We're going to keep playing Verdun on Friday nights as long as we're alive.
Oh dear God, I need a Friday night off.
But I mean, this digital presence isn't really going anywhere because it's the age-old adage: once it's on the internet, it's there forever.
Yeah,
history's on the internet now.
The people who stormed the Capitol found out about that. No, you're absolutely right, Andrew. It's one of those things that people are starting to now get comfortable with the idea of doing a live stream. You are comfortable with doing this, and will always do the first one, and they're like, "Oh, that was easy," or "That was fun," and they're ready to do another one, and you get that adrenaline rush. And I've seen that with so many other historians or brands in 2020. And now it's 2021, and they're trying to decide what can I do to be different and yet stay myself. Be a little bit outside the box as far as presentation or whatever. That's why one of the reasons why I felt that Twitch is going to really be new for a lot of people. And I'm seeing some great historians on TikTok. And people picked on TikTok like they picked on Instagram and whatever the first year came out. And now, I mean, my buddy Dan Casella started his, and he's got almost 1,000 followers in a week. And it's like,
I saw some of those.
Yeah, and he's in his federal kit doing stuff from the American Civil War and talking about history and all this other stuff. And somehow stitched together one video of mine with his. Thanks, Dan. And he's doing great, and it's bringing people a new sense of, like you said, about people are now home more. They need something to do. Why not take advantage of the situation and try something outside the box? And especially for people who lost their jobs, they're on unemployment or whatever, and they're not going to be able to go back to that job, or they're laid off until the pandemic's over, and then they can go back. You have free time, or maybe not much free time, but you have some extra time to think about, how am I going to make an impact in whatever it is I love or I'm passionate about in the next few months? Because you can literally talk about any niche in the history field and you will have an audience. You may only have an audience of 5, but you'll have an audience, and that's where you start. My brand started out with 0 followers, just like everybody else. And it just takes that patience. And I think that when you're stuck inside during a pandemic and you're wondering what to do, this is a great time to build. And because you're not, I hate to say it like this, it doesn't come out right, but it's the way I'm going to say it. You're not doing anything else. You're sitting around the house and you're watching Netflix. Okay. If you want to try something different with your passion, whatever that may be, go do it. What do you have to lose? And I think that with your brand starting out, and I'm very happy that you started your thing up, and there's going to be a lot of stuff from you coming in the future, because the pie is so big and everyone can get a piece of the pie. No one has to fight over this stuff. But if it's pumpkin pie, I'm fighting over it.
I'm more of an apple pie man myself, but
all right. Get away from the table.
But yeah, I mean, I think this past year has encouraged a lot of people to experiment, to try new things, to start building their own brand. I know Jen, who's in the chat, the Jaunty Crow. She started the Jaunty Crow. My dad also set up his own YouTube channel. Does his pandemic jams.
This is why I'm glad my dad doesn't have the internet.
But this is definitely I think COVID may have been a subtle sign from the universe to basically tell anyone who needed it, hey, that idea that you had, maybe now is the time to try.
Mm-hmm. The best thing that could have happened, the equation that would have made life a lot simpler for many more people, excuse me, from this pandemic is one, we already have the artistic and humanities thing starting to make a nice bubble where we are hoping it doesn't burst. We're starting to brand ourselves in new and dramatic ways, such as yourself, such as Jaunty in the comment section of Twitch, such as all many other people that we've seen hanging out online. The one thing that would have made it really, really take off, and I mean this for myself personally in a selfish way, and I mean this for a lot of other creators, is if we would have just allowed ourselves to have healthcare for all, because you wouldn't have to work for healthcare.
Yeah.
As far as a quote regular job, you could build your dream and not have to worry about going into debt when you go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And man, the American experience would be totally different because you would have so many entrepreneurs and people love small business, and you would have the ability to hire people or have interns and all that sort of stuff because you wouldn't have that extra weight on your shoulders. If we would have just had that artistic revival plus being able to take care of the populace as a whole, as far as healthcare is concerned, we would have had the nuclear bomb of this thing where it would have been like the amount of art and humanities that would have come out of this moment would be astronomical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I would like to say no. I just want to say that I'm very proud of you for doing your first live stream interview.
Thank you.
I can't remember my first one. It was so long ago.
Yeah.
I don't remember it. But I hope that you will keep it up because the brand awareness for not only you but anyone listening who's going to start a brand is astronomical right now. And you're going to be doing great things. And don't worry about the naysayers. Just go do your thing. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, John, thank you for coming on this
You're welcome.
Premiere episode of the Bowery Mick History Show. If you came in a little late, don't worry. I believe Facebook is going to save a recording of this, whether I like it to or not.
Yeah.
And then this is also going to be up on YouTube at some point in the near future. So you can head on over to that. And I think Twitch will hold on to a recording of it for a while.
Yes.
John, are you seeing that?
We'll save that for another live stream. I do have thoughts, but we'll save that for another live stream.
Thank you all for joining us.
That's a great way to go out right there.
Yeah.
I tell you. How much better can it be?
People who are watching on Facebook are missing out.
They are. Go to Twitch. It's edgier.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
So I'm going to be doing another one of these next month. Still haven't figured out who's going to be on that. Haven't figured out what that's going to be about. But until then, there's also going to be a pre-recorded podcast episode that's going to go up on YouTube at some point before the end of the month, where I'm going to sit down with some friends and we're going to talk about how we got interested in history, what history means to us. So be on the lookout for that. I will definitely publicize the absolute shit out of that when it happens. And if you haven't already, head on over to facebook.com/Bowery Mick to like the page. You'll be able to see, when I post blog posts on the WordPress. If you want to subscribe to the WordPress blog, you're welcome to do that as well. It doesn't really mean much in the grand scheme of things, but it does make me feel better inside.
There you go.
All right. Thank you and good night.
Night, everybody.